All right, guys, g'day, welcome back. Before I get started, I'm just going to let you know I'm going to do a breakdown of my tier list for leaders. But before I do, just want to quickly shout out StrayMaikol, I think is how you pronounce it. I very well could be wrong, and I apologize for that. But he's done a few kind of custom soundtracks based on Dokkan music. So go, hit him up. He's done a really good job, I think, and I think it's going to be quite appropriate for the discussion video, which will go quite a while today. It is a tier list based on 200% leads and how those units function as leaders, not as units, as leaders. There'll be time codes in the description for each unit. So without further ado, I'll get stuck in. Starting off down the bottom here, I just want to it's more of a disclaimer than anything. Anything that's exclusive to JP, I won't be touching on, as I haven't really had much experience using them, as I'm a global main. I do have access to a private server, but I don't think that really constitutes enough experience for me to be confident ranking them as leaders. The units I don't own, similar sort of vibe, not confident enough to kind of rank them, but Pan, Gamma 2, and Kid Goku are the Dokkan Fest exclusive 200% leaders that I don't own. So yeah, I'm going to leave them out for the time being. I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. This will go a long time. As I mentioned, there will be time codes in the description if you want to jump back and forth. Please join the discussion in the comments below. I want to know what you think of the list, what you would change. But keep in mind, this is going to be very heavily influenced on my experience with the units, which may differ to your experience, both by build, by the amount of paths open, by the way I use the units. But I think I've given them all enough of a run to really be confident. Some of the testing is earlier rather than it would be for others, but starting at the bottom and actually kind of this is being done during Saiyan Day 2023, by the way, where God Goku came out, and running him on the Blues team here is why I kind of wanted to put the thought into ranking leaders, because frankly these guys disappoint the living shit out of me. They are borderline pathetic, and I don't just mean them as a unit. I mean, they are really disappointing as a unit, but as a leader, I think the scope of their leader skill is really not broad enough. I don't think they necessarily function super well with the units that they lead. When they're in the spotlight, I think they underperform. When they're not in the spotlight, so they're like floating around whilst kind of a couple of main rotations do their thing, I feel like they leave themselves way too easily exposed for me to be comfortable really giving them any credit at all. And any of the rotations that I'd want to run with them not being in the spotlight, I feel like I can run using better leaders. So that's a quick summary of that. I'm going to try and be quick because this will be a long video. But again, anything you disagree with or anything you got questions over, definitely let me know in the comments below. I'm going to try and be as succinct as possible. Limit Breaker Goku, a unit I love. I really like the unit. A unit who in the spotlight functions very, very well, but I think honestly is better in the spotlight under different leaders. This guy here specifically, I think, is a better unit to have him in the spotlight for. Definitely not Hearts, but I don't know. Something about him, it's not great. The Dragon Ball Hero side is good because Dragon Ball Heroes units all function very well together, but the full power side of thing is not good at all. Full power is a category that really doesn't flow very well. The options, I guess the best way to describe it, it's an old kind of sports saying. Full power is actually kind of like joined forces, which I'll touch on when I get to the LR Super Saiyan Goku Vegeta, but it's a team of champions, not a champion team. Is full power. You've actually got units like, LR Gohan and LR Piccolo in full power, and even those guys there that I mentioned earlier, but as a leader, he's just not for it. I don't know. I've tried to make it work and it just doesn't really flow enough. It falls short. Too many units kind of get exposed here and there. It just doesn't have the options. It doesn't work. That's my bottom tier for 200% leaders. Not to say that they're not good, just compared to the rest of the crew, they're the worst. Unfortunately, that's just how I see it. I'm going to jump to Hearts on the topic of Dragon Ball Heroes units. The reason he's a little bit higher is because he's non-crossover. Well, he actually leads Dragon Ball Heroes and Time Travelers with a 30% to crossover. The Dragon Ball Heroes thing, similar to Goku, it's fine. It's great. They all work together. He's very extreme class orientated, which probably brings him down a little bit on the Dragon Ball Heroes side because they don't have as much love, the extreme class, in the crossover / Dragon Ball Heroes. But the Time Travelers is not too bad. And the reason, look, I mean, it's not great, but the Time Travelers float a little bit better. And because he supports as he floats, he guards for a while as well. I was testing him out quite a bit when LR Fusion Zamasu dropped, because I was using him and the EZA Rose and Zamasu as a rotation whilst 2 hearts floated around with another rotation. It's not the most fluid team I've ever run. I would really like an alternative version of that, but it went okay. It definitely went better than I had experience with these two, so that's why he's in the tier above. But again, it falls short in general. Cell is similar. This is going to be a very negative start to the video because I'm starting at the bottom, but I'd rather finish on a high. Cell's leader skill, honestly, the problem with it is that it's Cell Saga, not androids. Where, you know, it's Cell Saga for the 170, androids for the 30. If you flip that, I think it would be significantly different. Cell units like Cell units. It's as simple as that. Cell in the spotlight goes pretty hard, but there's so few units to help him in the spotlight. And then when he's not in the spotlight, really he doesn't have too many great options for other units to take the spotlight. So I don't know. I really like using him. I think he's a great unit. And the EZA LR Cell, both of them actually, are probably his best kind of options. Just not good enough though, unfortunately. He's lucky he's got a very good support unit in the 19 and 20. The tech androids are quite good, but look, I don't know. Just falls short a little bit, unfortunately. Bardock, see, I posted this tier list on Instagram and Twitter last night. It's 4:30 in the RV right now. I posted it about 11 o'clock last night. This was probably the most pushback I've had of all the placements, especially in conjunction to Raditz and maybe even the LR Super Saiyans here. But I want to talk about Raditz and Bardock together because they've both got one category where they lead, which is pretty non-existent. Saiyan Saga for Raditz, storied figures for Bardock. Both those categories really are struggling at the moment and probably aren't going to get enough regular buffs for them to kind of have much potential moving forward. However, Bardock's other category is Goku's family, a very, very good category. And Raditz's other category is Pure Saiyans. I'll throw the exchange Goku and Gohan in the mix as well because they're a Goku's family leader. So there's kind of a little bit of comparison for the few of them. In the spotlight, Bardock and Raditz, actually all three of them, in the spotlight, I don't think they've got... look, Bardock and Raditz in the spotlight don't have good enough partners to justify them being in the spotlight. Goku and Gohan probably do. That's probably the exception there. But out of the spotlight, Bardock really disappoints me. Especially because earlier on, if he's not in the spotlight, that generally means you're floating him around. When you're floating him around, especially on a category as good as Goku's family, he's not necessarily likely to get too much opportunity to attack with how powerful Goku's family will be in slot 1 and 2. That means he could be left a little bit exposed later in the fight if he hasn't had the opportunity to attack because he has an opportunity to build, which means he's going to be a little bit fragile. Whereas Raditz doesn't have any need to build. He floats, he does his thing in any slot. He's not as good in slot 1 despite his design, but I feel like what I was kind of saying with Bardock, where the slot 1 and 2 units of his main, like Pure Saiyans or Goku's family, however you want to look at it, the slot 1 and 2 units are going to be very, very powerful, which means they're probably going to be doing the majority of the damage, taking majority of the damage as well. Raditz thrives in that situation because chances are if he's in slot 3, then he's getting it to attack at a point where the enemy is below 50% HP, which is where his attack jumps relatively respectfully. I mean, it's not fantastic. That's why we're dealing with him in the bottom half of this tier list. But my experience with Bardock is early days because he's pretty fresh on global. My experience with Raditz is a little bit more concrete, I guess. I've had a little bit more of a play with him, but I've found that it's smoother with Raditz than it is with Bardock so far. That's how it stands at the moment. Let me know what you think of that. But again, I'm not dealing with anything in terms of top tier functionality, so it's not like it's not all that criminal that they're both pretty low. I mean, maybe you like Bardock a bit better than I do, but that's just how it stands at the moment. So I've already touched on Raditz. I'll continue a little bit with Goku and Gohan, who stand out a little bit from the comparison I made with Raditz and Bardock. I feel like they float very well. They are a bit fragile, though they do have built-in dodge, 50%, which lowers itself to 30% as the fight gets later in life. I'm not going to use the Gohan portion of their design too much because I feel like it's a little bit disappointing, or at least designed for content that doesn't exist yet is the best way I'll phrase that, because 3 super attacks, so the earliest you'll get them out is turn 5. You need to take at least 5 hits before the end of of Gohan's second appearance for his guard to be permanent. It's just, I'm not going to touch on that too much. I've already touched on it too much. But Super Saiyans also flows with Goku's family very, very fluidly. A 200% leader for something like AGL LR Gohan, who is just monstrous after his EZA. And also having a Super Saiyan Goku present in this unit. I like them in the spotlight, although I wouldn't necessarily put them there too much. But out of the spotlight, I feel like the units you want in the spotlight function very, very well. It's not perfect. Again, that's why they're lower on this tier list, but I feel like it works relatively well. I'm going to go into what I think about these guys next. The LR, Super Saiyan Goku and Vegeta. Similar to the exchange Goku and Gohan I just mentioned, they're in the spotlight. They still take too long in the spotlight to get their costume change off, which is really needed because their passive does expire prior to that. I don't know. Like I mentioned before, I mentioned full power in conjunction with joined forces, where it's a team of champions, not a champion team. And the extra part of their leader skill is movie heroes, who are just swimming in leaders, all of which are better than the Goku and Vegeta, in my opinion. I don't know. I like the other exchange, Goku and Vegeta. I feel like they've left me exposed a lot of the times when they're not in the spotlight, and even when they are in the spotlight, I've still found myself a little bit exposed because they don't have fantastic partners, and they really want to be in slot 2. I don't know, just not had a lot of success with them. I'm very disappointed because I really want to like that unit. I really want to like their team. Joined Forces was begging for a 170 leader, and frankly, unless it supports with Ki and or Rainbow Orb changing, Joined Forces will always suffer because of how broad its diversity is, and that diversity doesn't necessarily gel really well together. It's weird. It's getting better, but it's just, I don't know, it's in an odd spot, I've found. So that's why they're a little bit lower on the tier list, though I've had a little bit more success than the units below. Limit Breaker Vegeta is a couple of tiers above his Goku counterpart because I think Giant 8 Power flows much better than what Full Power does, and Giant 8 Power also works a little bit better with the Dragon Ball Heroes units, especially because you've got a couple of good slot 1 part units in there. So your Super Saiyan 4 Gohan and even Bardock to a degree function very, very well in slot 1 and allow, I mean, a lot of the non-crossover Super Saiyan 4s will only get the 170% lead, but I've had, it's worked fairly smoothly for me, and it's not, the most optimal team you'll ever find in the game, but I don't know, I felt like it flowed. You're probably gonna find it easy to, call me out on having a bit of bias because I do like Super Saiyan 4s and Giant 8 Power so much, but, I'm not putting them in the top tier, nor am I even putting him, as high as some of the top tier units. I found that mucking around with everything available under his leader skill, whether he's in the spotlight or not, was far more successful than I've had with the units in the tiers below. Wasn't as successful as the units in the tier above, but it was a different way of me using the LR Super Saiyan 4s as well, which it worked quite well with that, you know. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of options with Shocking Speed or even GT when using him as a leader, so it's not perfect, but hey, it's a thing. I'll use that as a segue to go straight into the 7th tier Super Saiyan 4s. Struggle in terms of GT heroes, unfortunately, but Fused Fighters has had quite a bit of a buff recently, and I shouldn't ignore the buff the GT heroes did get, but for the sake of conversation, I'm going to ignore it for now because I haven't tested the buff that did get. But having LR Piccolo and all the Piccolos basically, well, him and the banner unit, really helps them. I actually had a pretty smooth run with even using LR Fused Samasu, just floating around on their unit on their team. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're still very good. Their team is desperate for buffs, even though they have got a few on the Fused Fighter side of things. Hopefully with a few Vegetos. Actually, well, your 5-year anniversary units getting the Easy A during the 8th anniversary helped them a lot as well. But, you know, we could be staring down the barrel of some very likely potential buffs with Baby needing love, any Super Saiyan 4 Goku that counterparts any Baby in either a dual Dokkan Fest or a Dokkan Fest Carnival kind of setup. I'd love to see a what if full power Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta. I think that's a kind of not a far-fetched what if kind of a unit. Full power Super Saiyan 4 Goku could obviously use a new unit, as could, you know, transforming Super Saiyan 3 GT Goku into 4 and things like that. It's got potential. It's fallen a little bit, which is still why it's kind of in that mediocre kind of range, I guess, that those middle tiers. But that's where they're at. Majin Vegeta is a very similar sort of unit. In the spotlight, I think he works very well. However, he doesn't lead Majin Buu Saga very well, I don't think. Vegeta's family he leads quite well, though having Over in a Flash is probably his downside. But I think, I don't know, as I speak about him, I very easily could have put him in the tier below. But I don't know, I'm finding I've had a lot of success running him. He could definitely use some better Trunks units, but he got a massive Trunks buff on the Vegeta's family team, which helped him out significantly. So that's kind of why my more recent testing has included those guys on his team. So that's why he's where he is. Yeah, I don't know. If I'm questioning myself over any placement so far, it's probably him, and probably looking at moving him down, but I'm going to leave him there. I'm going to live with my decision. Look, on another day, this tier list might look different, but this is how we're going about it. Ginyu might ruffle some feathers, being higher up than the units below him, but I personally think he's very good. Probably not so great out of the spotlight. So again, I could be convinced to move him lower, even, you know, considering my own kind of criteria, which, to be clear, I have put a few bits of criteria in the thread of that Twitter post. But one thing that I think is incredibly valuable for Ginyu is something that I call a shaft leader. What a shaft leader is, and I've done a few shaft showcases in the past, shaft leader is basically having the unit in your collection which allows you to bring a unit you don't have in your collection as a friend. For Ginyu, it's LR Cooler. He leads LR Cooler for 200%. So you can easily run him in the spotlight with one of his banner units, so like the Purple Tornado or the STR Raccoon and Gildo. Either or, run them together. He'll stack and become just an impenetrable wall very quickly, with the ability to heal any damage you might take from, you know, any luck that might not go your way in terms of who takes a super. And then on the other rotation, run Easy A STR Cooler with the LR Cooler, and you're cooking a storm, because one cooler is more than enough to go berserk. So I think that's why I added him so high up. I could be convinced to move him lower, but I would prefer to hear what you think and what your experience is. But I've had a lot of success with with Ginyu, and especially because I have both of his banner units running one on each rotation with either banner unit separately. plus the easy A's to the two LRs that are the Teen Ginyus, or the Ginyu Force, I should say. I think the Ginyu Force is a very good, very, very good team. But yeah, that's where I'll put him for the time being. Moving up into the upper echelons, the more positive rather than negative kind of conversations I guess we'll have. In the S tier, I have two Carnival units. I'm going to start with Carnival Goku. Battle of Wits is an interesting team. I personally don't think it has as much right to be as good as it is. And it's got a lot of potential considering how barren buffs for Vegeta units have been recently, all of which will be on Battle of Wits. So, you know, let's see what happens at the Worldwide Celebration this year. But I don't know. I love a leader that supports, and a running theme that you're going to find with this Goku, Cooler, Vegeta and Trunks, and Gamma 1 up here, probably Carnival Goku as well, but not so much. They all get defense. Carnival Goku gets only attack, really. But having a leader who does require build-up, so that I was critical of Bardock for that. Bardock needs to attack. That's his problem, in my opinion. Whereas 1, 2, 3 here all get defense from being hit. Now, as a leader, in the spotlight, they'll take those hits really early. That's fine. But if they're not in the spotlight and you come into the fight early and everyone on turn is not who you want to be partnered with, you'd probably want to leave, you know, it's safe to leave these units 1, 2, 3 on turn. Take those hits early on when the hits aren't really stinging you so much. Then they're good to go. Float them off, you're gravy. So, look, I haven't really experienced the 10 hits as often. I guess mainly because, to be honest, I've been enjoying running him out of the spotlight, but the 5 hits is very common. Supporting 2 key and 50% defense is hugely valuable. And if you do get those 10 hits, you get the Scouter, which is just crazy. So I really like this guy as a leader. I probably should do more running him in the spotlight. But yeah, I'm very excited for a few Vegito buffs. Obviously, we got the 5th year Vegito Easy A, which buffed him hugely. LR Piccolo is just obviously one of his main... you'll never run Battle of Wits without LR Piccolo, in my opinion. And I'll be honest, you're probably never going to run Battle of Wits without this Carnival Goku. Whether you're running it as Piccolo as a leader or as Goku, it doesn't really matter. I think it's great. Carnival Cooler. Metal Cooler. Shaft leader for LR Cooler. I won't go into that too much. I just went through it with Ginyu. But his utility is crazy. Like I mentioned, taking the hits early when you're still sorting out who you want to be in the spotlight, if he isn't the one you're going to put in the spotlight, it's very easy. I think he only needs 4 hits rather than 5 that the Goku does. But having that nullification, having the revive, it's just... and all the heal that comes underneath it. His utility, I think, will always fly under the radar because it is so invisible. It's not just your big stats, your big defensive stats, your big attack stats. He'll nullify those super... like, do yourself a favor and run Cooler in the red zone 16, 17, and 18. I think 16's super is the only super attack that Cooler can't nullify. It's bonkers. It really is. It's crazy. And I mean, Gamma 1's the same, and he leads artificial life forms, which includes Kid Buu as well as Cooler. All of them nullify unarmed super attacks. Not to mention Gamma also leads movie heroes, which is Tech LR Gogeta, who also nullifies unarmed super attacks. So you can actually have a little bit of fun there. But I'm getting off topic. LR Metal Cooler, I think, is just a crazy good leader. Wicked Bloodlines is a little bit limited, although it's limited, I think it's still chock-a-block with top tier units. You know, you've got Easy A STR Cooler, who you're probably going to join at the hip with the LR STR Cooler. You've got LR AGL Golden Cooler, who's just a monstrous tank. I still rate, I'm going to say this wrong, but Coolizia, the fusion of Frieza and Cooler, I think he supports quite well, especially as a floater or slot 2 unit. So I think the options are quite good. but also being a shaft leader for Cooler, LR STR Cooler is a big deal. Now I'm going to start these top 2 tiers with probably as negative as I'll be about any unit in these in this conversation. Trunks and Vegeta. They are in the Z tier, or Z tier if you want to be nasty about it. The problem, I'm going to start with their problem and the reason that they're not in the top tier, and I guess this is maybe a running theme, but these units here, they all have a little bit of a blemish to the way they lead teams, so that I just wasn't comfortable throwing them in the top of the top. For Trunks and Vegeta, it was their ability to run out of the spotlight. So when they're floating around, I know that's not necessarily how you want to use them, but sometimes I do want to use them like that. Sometimes I do want to run like an LR Fusion Zamasu with Easy A, Rose and Zamasu, because they Trunks and Vegeta lead that rotation for 200%. I want to see what that looks like. So that means Trunks and Vegeta have to float. And unfortunately, I've had problems doing that. That's them functioning as a leader, and that's what this tier list is about. Please don't think that little kind of, I guess, rant to a certain degree diminishes their value at all. They're still in the Z tier. They're still the second highest tier. They're a fucking fantastic unit. A very, very good leader. But they just had that little blemish where I was like, oh, I'm sorry, but that stops you from being a top tier leader in my opinion. That's just how I see it. You may disagree. That's okay. Let us know in the comments below and we'll talk about it. I really, really do. I want to have those good conversations about your experience, maybe floating them around and how it's worked for you. But moving on, the LR gods. There's not, honestly, I don't really have much to criticize about them as a leader. They can be exposed defensively a little bit. That if there's a blemish to their kit, that's probably it. I don't know. For some reason, I just couldn't put them in the top tier. But that's not to say that they're not a good leader, because I think they're fantastic, because they float very, very good, especially when you transform them. I think, honestly, them floating with a couple of spotlight units who, like your Carnival Goku or whatever it might be, even the new God Goku, you've got so many decent options. And yeah, I really like them as a leader. For some reason, I just wasn't comfortable putting him in the top tier as a leader. Don't ask me why. I think maybe in the back of my mind, the Kamehameha being the extra 30% possibly held them back a little bit for me, given some of the other options, but I don't think that I'm comfortable using that as an excuse. I don't know. I just felt like the best placing for them was not in the top tier, but the next best thing. So that's where they ended up. Great unit. Loving the bits. Gamma 1. Artificial life forms is a unit, is a category I want to be fantastic. He doesn't function fantastically as the leader. His links don't lend themselves very well for that purpose, though he does support, so that kind of makes up for it. Obviously a shaft leader for Gamma 2, who I've had a little bit of experience using in that way. Obviously they're perfect partners, so that's obviously a good way to build that team, just running one of each as leader and friend, and then having a movie heroes centric kind of team. But I've been caught out a few times running Gamma 1 as a leader. Whilst I praised Carnival Goku, Carnival Cooler, and Trunks and Vegeta for having the ability to take hits early if they're not going to be running the spotlight, which is true also for Gamma 1. For some reason, it's a similar sort of deal with him and Trunks and Vegeta, where floating around, especially if he didn't get all the hits that he needed, he's left me a little bit exposed and vulnerable after taking a super attack a little bit earlier than I'd have liked him to. So I think that's where my reluctance to put him in the top tier as a leader comes from. But he's in the next best tier. I think he's very deserving of that. I would understand if you wanted him in the top tier. I would not argue at all. Same with Trunks and Vegeta and anyone in this Z tier. If you wanted to make the argument they're in the top tier, I'm not going to argue with you. Gohan. Now, a very divisive unit as a unit himself. But as a leader, most of the teams, and I'm going to say all of the teams that you build under Hybrid Saiyans, especially with the kicker of superheroes, really tailor themselves to him. All of his shortcomings, which he has, I'm not denying that, he's definitely got shortcomings which frustrate me, especially with a comparison of LR Cooler, who is a very similar unit in a lot of ways, but I feel like all of his shortcomings are very easily masked when he is the leader. You've got a lot of units that kind of complement him very well so that his shortcomings aren't as obvious or aren't as present. Though I think the reason I've put him not in the top tier is because as a superheroes leader, he's just not Piccolo. It's as simple as that. And we'll get into that in a second. But that's, again, we're in the realm of everyone's just ridiculously good as a leader. We're just still in that realm of they're not perfect as a leader just yet. That's just where I sit, at least, anyway. Love LR Gohan. I really do. I think he's a very, very fun unit to use. I mean, I printed his card in metallic for a reason, and I did the Beast Gohan as a present for a reason. I think he's a lot of fun. I love using his team. Carnival Goku may surprise a lot of people, as that's a little bit of feedback I've had, especially on Instagram, being so high as a leader. And a big reason for that is his guard becoming permanent is reliant on his revive, which obviously it can only happen once per team per fight. So if you're running him as a leader, therefore you're running two of him, only one of them can end up with permanent guard. Though through my experience, that hasn't been so much of an issue. He stacks quick enough that he becomes a relatively solid healer. So keeping your HP high is not all that much of a problem, especially if you only need one of them to be above a HP threshold. That revive criticism obviously is present as well for his team, given that, I mean, this is just a figure I'm pulling out of the air, but most, if not all, like 90% of the revive units that we have in the game are on powerful comeback. But I don't know. I've found his team very fluid. He floats very well, although, you know, he stacks kind of as slowly or as quickly, however you want to say it, as Trunks and Vegeta. Having the guard in any slot is kind of the difference. These aren't ordered, by the way, these tiers. But I don't know. In the spotlight, he thrives. Out of the spotlight, I haven't had any problems. But I understand some of the criticisms behind it. And those criticisms are probably what stopped me from putting him in the top tier, in all honesty. But he's still there or thereabouts. I really, really enjoy him. Yeah, that's the Z tier, or Z tier if you're one of those. I'm Australian, so it's Z. Moving up, this is the best of the best. There is almost nothing I can say wrong about these units. And I'm going to start with Piccolo, who I cannot sing his praises high enough. I've said before, I like a unit that supports when they lead. Piccolo does that, though you could argue that he doesn't do it very well if he's not in the spotlight. Fair enough, he needs to take his hit before he supports the rest of the team with 2 key. But honestly, like, he's so defensive, almost for free. He's so offensive, almost for free. I mean, he needs to take hits, but I've already spoken about how easy it is at the start of the fight when his guard's active as well, for him to just chill on rotation for 1 or 2 turns whilst you sort out the rest of the team and then push him off. Like, he also has that heal. He needs to take 7 hits, and I'll be honest, from experience, I've not actually seen that heal go off very often. I mean, you could use that as a criticism, but I'll flip it and be like, well, maybe he's just that good and his team is that good that they haven't been left exposed enough for him to activate it. Like, it's just one of those things. I don't know. Piccolo is just an MVP of this game right now, and I couldn't be happier that Piccolo as a character got the respect of not only a top tier unit, but a top tier leader as well. I'm stoked. He's only going to get better with more Vegito buffs and more Piccolo buffs. Easy A, that physical Piccolo, and I cannot wait to use him. Piccolo is amazing, top tier leader, best of the best. LR Cooler, similar. I know a lot of people have soured on Cooler a little bit in recent times, but I mean, look, the game hasn't gotten any harder since the 200% meta was introduced in the 7th anniversary. Cooler is as good now as he was on the day he came out, and I think his team, and I'm thinking about his team from both the perspective of a movie boss's team and a Terrifying Conqueror's team, I think is just fantastic. The Janembas, the Golden Freezers, they all they complement what Cooler needs to be ridiculous. I find myself floating LR Cooler earlier in the fights, which sounds silly because he wants to build up doing attacks, and I criticize Bardock for that. But I mean, like, I float him around. I float 2 Coolers around usually until Golden Freezer's damage reduction reaches its lowest point. I'm usually running Golden Freezer with Easy A STR Cooler while he's stacking. By the time that damage reduction is low, I feel like I've done enough with Cooler to get to maybe half his passive build up. Then I'm throwing him on rotation with his best friend in the whole wide world. Then he starts to just go berserk. There's another Cooler that's floating around going berserk as well. The Janembas are also doing their thing, and typically when the LR Janemba is fully built, I'm running him in slot 2 next to the Tech Janemba in slot 1. When the LR Janemba is built, I throw him in slot 1, bring the other LR Cooler onto that rotation because he still has 4 out of the 5 links whilst getting other links from behind. It's just so fluid, and that's kind of the theme of the top tier, is fluidity. How simply smooth it all seems to work. And I've used him with so many different options. I like Garlic Jr. still, and I've said this to a friend of the channel, Celtic Link, and I. We chat a lot in private, and we have this theory that Garlic Jr. is bugged. He has no right to be as defensive as he is, and for some reason he holds up really well. But I'm getting off topic. Garlic Jr. is not the topic here. Cooler is. I just think he's as good as it gets. I just don't think there's too many shortcomings with him as a leader and how he performs as a leader. The units that he allows to bring. I mean, look, if your collection of units is not necessarily as broad as mine, I can understand why through experience you may not rate Cooler as highly, and that's completely understandable. And let me know what disappointing experiences you've had with LR Cooler, but I just think he's the best of the best. Same as Piccolo. I'm a huge fan of Cooler as a character as I am with Piccolo, so I couldn't be happier that he's, as good as he is. And last, but most certainly not least, the most recent 200% leader, the new Saiyan Day, God Goku, who has only been out for like 3 days at the time of recording. Pure Saiyans, Hybrid Saiyans leader for 170, Exploding Rage and Power of Wishes for 30 for the boost to get other units up to 200. I kind of slept on this tier list last night and played a little bit in private, and I think I could be slightly critical at the moment of the categories that get the extra 30 for God Goku, but I don't care. I think they probably should have changed Exploding Rage for Realm of Gods, all things considered, but I don't think it matters. The value that Goku has in and out of the spotlight, where he guards, providing you're getting his orbs, he's getting that additional super, providing you get those orbs, which from my limited experience, similar to Bardock, testing is early. Like I said, he's been out for 3 days. I've never had a problem. Whether you're in slot 1, 2, 3, it doesn't matter. He's not had that problem. And the kicker for this God Goku, which I don't think I've been able to say about any unit for a very, very long time, his links. A lot of these units have great links, especially as leaders. Do not get me confused. Shocking speed, prepared for battle, and over in a flash, we have not seen on a singular unit, I don't think ever. Super Saiyan 3 Bardock, who is a mainstay on this God Goku's team, by the way, he was praised for having prepared for battle and over in a flash, and rightfully so. Having shocking speed on top of that, chef's kiss, icing on the cake for this God Goku. Just especially given the units he leads. Like throwing Gohan, who's on the 200% under God Goku, even the Super Saiyan 4s being on that team as well. Just, again, fluidity, smoothness. I'm having a whole lot of fun with this God Goku. His best friends are right here. I guess it's a shame they're not under 200% on his leader skill, but it is what it is. That's how I see it. Best of the best are the three at the top there, God Goku, Cooler, and Piccolo. Below them, Tech Carnival Goku, LR Gohan, Gamma 1, the LR Gods, Trunks and Vegeta. Below them, Carnival Cooler, Carnival Goku, STR. Below them is the LR Super Saiyan 4s, Majin Vegeta, Ginyu. In the B tier, and this is where we're getting to the kind of the more disappointing realms, Limit Breaker Vegeta, Exchange Goku and Gohan, Raditz, and LR Super Saiyan Goku and Vegeta. Below them, Bardock, Cell, Hearts, and the disappointing duo, Exchange Goku and Vegeta, and Limit Breaker Goku. That's how I see it. As I said, very, very subjective, very much based on experience and opinion and preferences even to a lot of an extent. But I want to hear, I really, really, really want to hear from you guys. What would you change in this tier list? What experience have you had that would change how you place things and all that kind of stuff? Tell me every thought you've had about this tier list. I hope I've explained myself well enough. I hope you understand where I'm coming from, even if you disagree. But yeah, let me know in the comments below. Jump over to Twitter, let me know. Instagram as well. I have my Discord linked in the description of this video. I'm trying to get that more active. I've had a whole lot of people jump into that recently. And the conversation's starting to get more and more common over there. So yeah, let's talk. What do you think about leaders? Who's your top tier 200% leaders? Let me know in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more like this. This is my first time doing a tier list. I like to do them very narrow like this one is, very specific. If you have a topic you'd like me to do a tier list on, let me know in the comments below as well. I'm very open to it and having these more discussion-based videos for you to get to know me a little bit better. Subscribe if you want, like if you want. If you're not, if you don't want to, that's fine, but it's free to do so, so I don't see why you wouldn't. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.